Hey, Quad Bros, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Glad you guys are here. It's come to my attention that in all of my perk guides, I've never actually broken down each individual perk in each individual tree in Enlisted, and I should probably go about doing that. It would be probably good for you guys to have a better understanding of each individual perk and which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones to get, and which ones to avoid. So let's go ahead and jump into that right now. Remember, if this guide helps you, like, comment, and subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And let's start with the green tree here. So if you didn't know, the mobility tree, the green tree here, gives you 0.5% sprint speed for each perk point you have. So this guy, for example, has 17 points, which gives 8.5% sprint speed just naturally. That's pretty cool. Going into the tree itself, 20% maximum jump height. This isn't very good. This can be okay on snipers. One of the reasons you might want to pick this up is just because you do have to have 6 perk points to get into this bottom tier down here. Like, you have to just have those. Like, if I reset these perks real quick, you'll see, like, I have to spend 6 points on any of the tier 1 perks. So this could be like a good way to get to that, even though this perk isn't necessarily the best in the first place. I will say that on snipers, this perk is a little bit better, just because sometimes with snipers, you want to like jump up onto like a platform you might not otherwise be able to reach, or up onto the roof of a building or something like that, which can make it kind of nice. But for the majority of soldiers, I think this is not really a perk worth taking. Movement speed while crawling or crouching can actually be a pretty good perk. Again, especially for like machine gunners or snipers that might be crawling around a little bit more often. But the big thing here is it's just really good for any soldier who's firing a fully automatic weapon, because you want to crouch to get that like 50% or 30%. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. You get a big recoil buff when you're crouched. Your recoil is significantly lowered whenever you're crouched. And so it's good to have this perk maxed out, so then you can strafe better while you're crouched, which will make it harder for you to hit, obviously. So strafing 60% faster while you're crouching is a very good perk. 100% speed of extinguishing fires will save your life a lot. I almost always have this perk. And 50% speed of changing pose is okay. It's not amazing. It's not like a perk where you're like, yes, you need to have this. You always need to have this perk, because you don't. But it's not a bad perk by any stretch of the imagination. It's especially good on like soldiers who want to be going prone a lot, maybe like machine gunners and things like that. Again, you're going to want to crouch to save that, or to get that extra recoil debuff or buff, or whatever you want to call it, I guess, the reduced recoil. So having this, it's not so bad, right? It's not the worst thing ever. Let me just put some points in here. There we go. Moving on to the bottom tier here. Medkit use speed. This is where you get a lot of choices, by the way. Medkit use speed, fantastic perk, right? Like, I think having this maxed out and having 3 points in this where you have 75% medkit use speed, that can be really good, because you can get up to 75% medpack use speed, and you can revive yourself from being down in just 2 seconds, which is a huge difference compared to 8 seconds, which is the normal, and will absolutely save your life and turn a lot of fights very, very quickly. So I definitely recommend getting this perk. It's a fantastic perk. Personally, I normally only do about 2 points into this. I like to do about six ticks or whatever, 6 perk points put into this. I think that's normally the best. I think the difference between 50% and 75% is not that big. Getting up in 4 seconds compared to 2 seconds, meh, right? Not a huge deal. It's a little bit of diminishing returns at that point. And I prefer putting more points into these 2 perks here, which is climb speed and weapon aim speed. So climb speed is kind of a slept on perk. I don't think very many players take this perk, but this perk is crazy. For just 8 perk points, or even just 4, right? You can massively increase the amount of time, or decrease the amount of time, I suppose, that you take to climb through a window. And for aggressive playstyles that are going to be climbing through windows, especially on really like building heavy maps, right? Like if you're playing a lot of Moscow and things like that, like low tier Soviets or something like that, like Stalingrad, Moscow, that stuff. Oh my God, are you going to want climb speed? It is crazy how important this perk is to be able to just like constantly climb through windows and not get caught with your pants down. The amount of times that I get killed climbing through a window and wish I would have this perk is so high. So highly recommend this perk. Very good perk. Normally I put about 2 points into it, but putting all 4 points, not a bad deal. Aim speed, I hope I don't have to explain too much why this is a good perk. Being able to get your gun up that much faster is very good. The only downside of this perk is that it's very expensive. 10 perk points to get 20% weapon aim speed. Yes, it's substantial. Yes, it will make you win fights that you otherwise would lose. But on weapons that already aim really quickly, like SMGs, it's not as impactful, though it is still nice. I think this is a necessary perk and something you should definitely have if you're using heavy LMGs like the MG42 or the Browning M1919A6, things like that. But otherwise, it's not like a super big deal. And I would honestly probably prefer medkit use speed and climb speed. And finally, we have our movement speed perks, run speed and sprint speed. Run speed will be applied all of the time. So like run speed is just your natural movement speed. Your soldiers are always considered to be running. So maxing this out is always kind of nice. Sprint speed is specifically when you're sprinting. Sprint speed, again, they're both nice. They're good perks. But honestly, like getting that small amount of extra movement speed is not something that I personally value that much, especially because you get some base movement speed with this. So I would really prefer medkit use speed and climb speed, but it's not wrong by any stretch. Like I mentioned, guys, the mobility tree, it's just chock full of stuff that's always generally just kind of good, right? And it's going to be the tree that's probably going to take up like most of this video. Lastly, but not leastly, is our build speed perk. This is exclusive to engineers. This is actually not a good perk. This perk sucks. The reason this perk sucks is that most of the time that you're building stuff with engineers is when you are just sprinting somewhere and laying things down quickly. And if that's the case, sprint speed actually comes out ahead. Like if your goal is just to sprint somewhere and to build something, then you want sprint speed, because sprint speed will actually get you there faster, and then build speed, letting you build it faster, won't actually save you time. Build speed is only really useful if you are a dedicated engineer player that wants to lay down a lot of like fortifications, which typically speaking is like not a good thing to do unless you have ample time. And if you have ample time, why do you need this perk? You know what I mean? So in my opinion, I don't really think this perk is ever worth picking up. I very rarely pick it up. I have it on some soldiers just because it is something I picked up, but it's not something that I would recommend you guys get. Moving on to Vitality. The Vitality tree is very, very simple, guys. Every perk on this list is secondary to this perk. This is the perk that matters, and this perk costs 16. So, ultimately, a lot of these perks don't really matter because the majority of your perk points are always going to be going into Vitality, and I mean that very seriously. There is not a single class in this game that benefits at all from not having Vitality. There's not a single class in this game that I would recommend not having Vitality on. Every single class in this game should have a minimum of 16 Vitality to be worth using. And every single class and soldier in this game should be using Vitality. I'm not kidding when I say that if you do not have the Vitality perk on every single one of your soldiers, you're objectively playing Enlisted wrong. There are not very many cases that I will say that, but this is one of them. Like, there's a lot of cases of, oh, this gun is nice and this gun is nice and both have pros and cons. Not with this. Vitality is the best perk in the game. It is objectively overpowered. It is objectively the best thing in the entire game, and it should be removed, changed, reworked, and should have been 3.5 years ago when the game released, and it hasn't. You need this. I cannot stress it enough. I hope this whole little rant here has, I mean, to explain it, basically, guys, this gives you 35% more HP. You have 10 base HP. This puts you at 13.5. 13.5 HP makes you survive shots from semi-autos. It makes you survive shots from like legged bolt action shots. It makes you survive random like AI shooting you across the map shots. It makes you survive random shots from like SMGs. It'll make you survive an extra shot from SMGs. It'll make you survive a shot from an LMG when you would normally go down. There's a million situations where this perk will save your life. And on top of all that, it also gives you a higher chance to get downed instead of just outright dying. It's just ridiculous. It's really overpowered. It's just the best perk. Don't take anything else. We'll go through this tree just because you might have some extra leftover points. Health regen out of combat is terrible. There's no reason to take it. It doesn't regen very much. This perk is pretty good. You do get concussed a lot in Enlisted. I think this is a solid perk to pick up. Definitely one that is worth using. At least a single point. In fact, we'll do that right now because I like that perk a lot. 33% breath hold time while aiming is okay. It's not the best perk in the game. I think it is on the lower side, but if you're like a sniper and you just like really like holding your breath, then like, okay. I wouldn't recommend putting any more than 1 point into it though. Stamina regen speed is pretty solid. Fine. I don't know. I don't feel like I run out of stamina very often. Or if you really care about stamina, then just like buy a flask. I don't see a reason to spend a perk point on something you can like buy. But I don't know. Save silver. So that's cool. Aim stability with firearms after receiving damage is a pretty cool perk. Unfortunately, it is too expensive. It costs 8, and you will never be able to have 8 because you need your vitality. So it is really not that good of a perk. But it's kind of nice and is valuable on, like, I don't know, very aggressive people. You might put, like, a point into this. Health restored by a med pack is pretty nice if you can get it, right? If you're a soldier that can have 20 vitality, this can be a pretty solid thing to pick up. But if you can't get it, then you can't get it. So it doesn't really matter. 33% stamina. You get an extra point of stamina up to double stamina. Again, a nice perk to have, but not something that you can typically invest a lot of points into because you're needing to get vitality. And then finally, 10% resources available for building. This is for engineers. Engineers specifically have like 20 resources, I think, and maxing this out makes you go up to 25, right? Doesn't this max out at 40%? So 40%, it's a little bit more than 25. But regardless, it's like, it's still like not that good. Like if you need more resources, bring an engineer squad and switch to another engineer. Don't get this perk. Not necessary. And finally, we move on to our weapon tree. Also for for vitality, you get stamina, by the way, base. So 18% more stamina, 1% per point. Weapon, you get half a percent point for every point of half a percent point of vertical recoil reduction. Sorry. And you know, I have 8%, so you can see that there. Okay. Perk points. This perk here, this is a fantastic perk. I recommend you guys always have 2 perk points associated with this perk. This gives you reduced dispersion when you're quick turning. It is very hard to explain what this does without having the real-time like showcase of it that I don't currently have on hand. But basically, when you guys turn and then fire, if you turn too quickly and fire too quickly after turning, you will have increased dispersion. This is to kind of make the game a little bit slower and is a really bad way of doing it. And basically, this reduces that. So this will just overall make you miss less. It'll make you miss less due to dispersion and randomness. And it is only 2 perk points, and you need to have 6 perk points in this top tree anyway. So I definitely recommend picking this one up. Weapon change speed is utterly worthless. I don't know why you would use this unless you're doing something goofy like spamming like grenades and things like that, because it makes you switch faster between grenades. But ultimately, this is just like not a useful perk because you don't swap weapons that quickly. Or you don't swap weapons in Enlisted very often. Grenade throw range is one of those perks that I think is really good if you get it on every soldier, because it's like, it's nice to be able to throw grenades further, but if you don't realize you have this perk, then you'll just forget about it, and then you'll like yeet your grenade way too far. At least that's my experience. So that's kind of a rough perk. I don't know. I personally never take this thing, but it's not a bad perk by any means. It costs 6, which can be rough. But this one, 25% melee damage and 5% melee attack speed. I would say dump some leftover points into this. This is a decent one to like dump points into, but it's not a good perk. You don't like, extra melee damage is just like not relevant, right? Like just shoot people. Like it's kind of fun in like a vacuum or if you're like goofing off, but you know, or you're like, oh, I'm gonna do like a bonsai build with like a bunch of katanas and stuff. Like that's kind of fun, and I've done that for sure, but it's not something that is like really worth doing. You know what I mean? So I would not recommend doing that. Then we have firearm vertical recoil. This is the perk where you're going to want to invest at like pretty much all of your points, at least 12 on the majority of soldiers. The only exception to this is if your soldier is using the occasional weapon that has very little recoil or bolt actions. Bolt actions obviously don't need recoil reduction because they're bolt actions. And the very rare case of some guns don't need to have all 4 perk points of this, right? All 4 tiers or whatever. They can get away with just like 2 and you can save some points. But otherwise, the majority of soldiers are going to want 40% firearm vertical recoil. It just reduces your recoil, and it's the best way to do it. If you didn't know, there is also horizontal recoil reduction. Typical gaming convention says that you want to reduce your horizontal, not your vertical, because horizontal is impossible to predict while vertical is just pulling down. The problem with that is that Enlisted it's very little horizontal recoil to exist in the first place. And so taking horizontal recoil reduction really doesn't matter because you're only shaving off a very small amount of horizontal recoil, while vertical recoil is typically very high in Enlisted, and so shaving off 40% of that is going to make you significantly more accurate and easier to control your recoil. So always try to pick up at least 2 to 4 tiers of this on the majority of guns. If you're using a bolt action, you're going to want the 4% firing rate while using bolt actions. That's it. I mean, yeah, that seems pretty obvious. Like, these are just interchangeable. If you're using a bolt action, get this perk. If you're not using a bolt action, get this perk. That's it. That's these 2 perks. Finally, we have this perk. Never get more than 1 tier of this perk. 1 tier of this perk will give you a greater chance to get downed instead of being killed. It is a small amount. It's not a lot. I don't remember the exact math off the top of my head, but it is very little. It's like maybe 10%. It might be slightly more than that, but it is not a lot. But there's not a lot else to spend your points on, so spending 1 tier of this on it is not a bad thing to do, especially because it's just 2 perk points. So it's not a bad pickup, but don't spend any more. The increase only gives you more time in the down state before bleeding out, which doesn't matter at all. Like, not even a little bit. And finally, we have firearm reload speed. Yes, reloading your gun faster is pretty good. This is mostly good on guns that have very long reload times, like, for example, machine guns. But otherwise, it's something that you can pretty much skip out on, and it's not that big of a deal. Most guns reload pretty quick. Shaving 12% firearm reload speed off of a gun that has 2-second reload is only shaving off like 0.03 seconds or something like that. So it's not a big deal, but it does... It's not a substantial difference, but it is a difference, right? So a decent perk to pick up if you've got some leftover points, but otherwise skip it in favor of this perk, and like this perk or something like that. So, and there you have it, guys. You can see it's not too complicated. A lot of the perks in Enlisted are just unfortunately not very good. I really wish that they would do a balance patch for a lot of these perks, maybe add some new ones in. There are, of course, tanker perks that we can hit real quickly. We'll just take a look at these real fast. This perk, all the driver perks are worthless unless you are a driver. So give all of your driver soldiers every single one of the driver perks and ignore everything else. Otherwise, doesn't matter. If your soldier is not a driver, get the extinguishing vehicle perk and or the vehicle repair perk. Both of those are solid. And if they're a loader, you want to get the 2 loader perks. So both loader perks you should always have for your loaders. If your vehicle has this is a loader perk. This is a loader perk. So loader perk. If it's the gunner, they should get the gunner perk instead of the loader perk. If you're in the weird case where your gunner is your loader, then you're going to want to take the loader perk over the gunner perk. That all makes sense, guys. You're pretty much never going to have these modules durability restored after repair. This is a worthless perk because you already have so many repairs. The same goes for this perk for the number of uses of a repair kit. You can always just use your other soldier. If you're repairing your tank that much, you probably don't have a crew because they're all dead, and it's really not a valuable thing to be using. Finally, we're going to go to our planes, which pilots only have a couple perks that are worth talking about it. We don't need this perk. This perk's not very useful. This perk is very useful. In fact, I should get it right now, which is reduced effect of head swinging during sharp maneuvers, so it's easier to fly. Better blackout, so you don't black out as much. And finally, better detection of enemy aircraft at range. You're going to want all 3 of these perks. All of the perks inside here are not really worth picking up. Flight stamina is probably the only one here that I can think about. I guess maybe better control while blacking out, but you don't really want to be blacking out in the first place. So that's it. This, pick up pilot perks as things you have left over like this, but these 16 cost perks are always the ones that you guys are going to want to pick up. These 3. Pilots are very easy to tech for, or perk setup for. There you go, guys. This turned out being a lot longer of a video than I kind of set out to mean it to be, but there's a lot of perks and there's a lot of discussion to be had for them. So Hopefully this video helped you. If it did, like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it does help me out. Let me know in the comments down below, guys, what perks you guys are using. Do you guys agree with what I'm saying here? Do you disagree? Let me know your comments down below. I'd love to hear them. And without anything else, thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.